This question tests knowledge of standard cost development methods, particularly the role of participation in setting standards. Standard costs are predetermined estimates of material, labor, and overhead costs used for budgeting, cost control, and performance evaluation. The way standards are established can significantly affect employee motivation, acceptance, and performance. The key phrases in the question are communication, bargaining, and interaction, and before the standards are accepted by top management. These phrases indicate that multiple organizational levels collaborate during the standard-setting process. Rather than imposing standards from the top, managers, supervisors, accountants, and engineers work together to develop realistic and achievable standards. This collaborative process increases commitment and improves the quality of the standards by incorporating operational knowledge from those closest to production activities. Imposed approach. Incorrect. An imposed approach establishes standards unilaterally by senior management, with little or no input from lower-level managers or employees. It does not emphasize communication or bargaining. B. Authoritative approach. Incorrect. An authoritative, top-down approach is similar to the imposed approach, where standards are determined primarily by upper management and communicated downward, limiting participation by operational personnel. C. Engineering approach. Incorrect. The engineering approach relies on technical studies, such as time and motion analysis and industrial engineering methods, to determine efficient standards. Although engineers may participate, the emphasis is on technical measurement rather than organizational participation and negotiation. D. Participative approach. Correct. The participative approach involves communication, negotiation, and cooperation among managers, supervisors, accountants, and engineers before standards receive final approval. This process improves employee acceptance, motivation, and goal congruence while producing more realistic performance standards. Correct answer. D. Participative approach. Exam tip. Participative approach equals joint discussion, communication, bargaining, and employee involvement. Authoritative/imposed approach equals top-down decision-making with limited participation. Engineering approach equals standards based primarily on scientific and technical analysis. This question tests understanding of ideal standards and practical standards in standard costing systems. Standard costs are predetermined costs used for planning, budgeting, cost control, and performance evaluation. Organizations generally establish either ideal standards or practical, currently attainable, standards. The key phrase is, when compared with ideal standards, practical standards, students should understand the difference between these two concepts. Ideal standards assume perfect operating conditions with no machine breakdowns, material waste, idle time, or worker inefficiencies. They represent maximum theoretical efficiency and are often difficult to achieve in practice. Practical standards, on the other hand, recognize normal operating conditions and include reasonable allowances for unavoidable inefficiencies such as machine maintenance, normal spoilage, setup time, and worker fatigue. Because they are attainable under efficient operations, practical standards are generally considered more useful for motivating employees and evaluating performance. A. Produce lower per unit product costs. Incorrect. Ideal standards typically assume perfect efficiency and therefore produce lower unit costs than practical standards. Practical standards include normal inefficiencies, resulting in slightly higher standard costs. B. Result in a less desirable basis for the development of budgets. Incorrect. Practical standards are generally more useful for budgeting because they reflect realistic operating conditions and achievable performance levels. C. Incorporate very generous allowances for spoilage and worker inefficiencies. Incorrect. Practical standards include reasonable and normal allowances, not excessive or generous allowances. Too much slack would reduce their usefulness for performance evaluation. D. Serve as a better motivating target for manufacturing personnel. Correct. Because practical standards are challenging yet attainable, employees are more likely to accept them and remain motivated to achieve them. Ideal standards may be viewed as unrealistic and discourage employee effort if they appear impossible to attain. Correct answer. D. Serve as a better motivating target for manufacturing personnel. Exam tip. Ideal standards. Perfect conditions, no inefficiencies, difficult to achieve. Practical standards. Realistic conditions with normal inefficiencies, better for budgeting, performance evaluation, and employee motivation. This question examines the development of standard costs, specifically the standard price of direct materials. In a standard costing system, the standard price represents the expected cost per unit of material that should be paid under normal operating conditions during the budget period. Standard prices are used for budgeting, inventory valuation, and variance analysis. The key issue is how a standard price should be established. An effective standard should be realistic, attainable, and agreed upon by those responsible for purchasing and senior management. It should reflect expected market conditions, supplier negotiations, purchasing volumes, and company policies. Setting a standard that is intentionally too low or too high will distort variance analysis and reduce its usefulness for performance evaluation. Current actual cost plus the forecasted 10% price increase. Incorrect. Although the expected 10% increase provides useful information, simply adding 10% to the current price ignores factors such as purchase volume discounts, supplier negotiations, and actual market conditions. Standard prices should not be based solely on a simple mathematical adjustment. B. Lowest purchase price in the anticipated range to keep pressure on purchasing to always buy in the lowest price range. Incorrect. Setting the standard at the lowest possible price may create unrealistic standards and frequent unfavorable variances, reducing employee motivation and the usefulness of variance analysis. C. Highest price in the anticipated range to ensure that there are only favorable purchase price variances. Incorrect. An intentionally high standard makes performance appear better than it really is and undermines effective cost control. D. Price agreed upon by the purchasing manager and the appropriate level of company management. Correct. Standard prices should be established through coordination between purchasing personnel and management, taking into account expected market prices, supplier contracts, purchase quantities, and organizational objectives. This produces a realistic and achievable standard for planning and performance evaluation. Correct answer. D. Price agreed upon by the purchasing manager and the appropriate level of company management. Exam tip. A good standard price should be realistic, attainable, and jointly developed, not intentionally optimistic or conservative. It should provide a fair benchmark for evaluating purchasing performance.